What is up, guys? Today I'd love to share with you a simple and aggressive plan in the most common chess opening in the Italian game. I'm Grandmaster Igor Smirnov, and let's jump right in. Here's a very common situation. You did everything right, you developed your pieces, you castled, but you also hid your plan so well that it is now a mystery for everyone, including yourself. Here's what to do instead. Let's start from this position. Usually your opponents will either go for knight f6 or bishop c5, but it doesn't matter for us because your plan will remain to be the same. A slight upside for bishop c5, the Joko piano, is that after watching this video, you'll be able to tell everyone that you know how to play the piano. Besides that, there is no difference. If they go knight f6, attacking this pawn, you just play pawn to d3, guarding the pawn. Now, after that, they can do whatever they want. And here's the thing. The OGs know that I actually covered this plan in one of my past videos. However, after that, even though many of you guys told me that you're just crushing with it, but many other people also told me that, my opponents play random moves and, try different tricks. I'm not sure what to do. That is why I decided to record this video and cover all these things so that you play consistently well. All right, so let's say your opponent just plays whatever random moves. First off, you play c3. Notice not knight to c3. That is the first part of the plan. And there is an idea which I think most players misunderstand behind this move, because yes, it potentially prepares you for grabbing the center with d4 somewhere down the line, but that's not even the thing you're going to do. You just want to keep it really rock solid in the middle of the board. And if you look at this pawn structure, you can notice that it really restricts your opponent's knights. Like this knight from c6 just can't come forward because of your pawns. And the same is true for the other knight. It just can't come forward. Because they're hitting the wall, these knights are now limited. They can't come forward, there's no trick, and they just can't create any problems for you. Which enables you to go to the next stage of our plan, which I call magnetism. It's a very tricky and provocative chess idea. You are waiting for your opponent to go bishop g4. And in the vast majority of the cases, your opponents just can't resist the temptation. The idea of moving the bishop out, pinning your knight down to the queen, and creating some problems for you, it just feels so appealing that, again, in the vast majority of the cases, they will play this move, and I will tell you down the line what to do if they don't. Once they bring their bishop out, you then play pawn to h3, asking this bishop to make a decision, whether they want to go back or they want to trade. Again, I'll show you both ways. In most cases, they're going to go back because it makes more sense. They want to maintain this pin, which they created by developing the bishop on the first place, and then you start horsing around. It's a very fancy maneuver, which looks slow at first, but you will see in a moment how it quickly turns your position into a very aggressive setup. There is also another important idea, an important move to play, which is retreat the bishop back to b3. Quite a mysterious move to play, but it makes perfect sense. This bishop is very powerful. It looks towards your opponent's future castling, and we do wish to save this bishop from being traded off. With the bishop on c4, at some point your opponent may wish to jump with his knight to a5 and then trade this bishop. Somehow I couldn't draw the line, but let me show you an idea. Let's say you play some random move, right, for white, and at some point he can go knight a5, and if your bishop has no way out, it will be exchanged, and we wish to prevent this. That is why we play bishop to b3, so that if your opponent ever wants to attack the bishop, it can very easily retreat back, and your bishop will be saved. And in most cases, your opponent won't even try that because it's clear that they cannot do this. Now, which means that they will probably just castle, and now you go rook to e1, vacating this square for the knight. It all seems very slow, but in fact, we're gonna turn this into a real storm very quickly. Now, your opponent will do whatever, a6, queen d7, rook e8, I don't know what, doesn't really matter. And again, notice the beauty of this pawn, right? It takes away this square, his knight can't ever jump forward and create any threats. So let's say they go a6 pretty often, you keep horsing around, and ultimately your knight finishes this very impressive jump where you reroute it to the king side, and now it joins your attack. It also hits this bishop on h5 right now, and therefore black will need to do something about that. If he takes on f3, good for you, that'll only help you to advance your queen into the attack as well, and you'll get a position very similar to the main line. If the bishop retreats back to g6, you keep chasing it, this time with the other knight, and notice that knight takes g6 is actually a very serious threat. If black ignores it and plays whatever, the knight takes g6 just wins the bishop, because once your opponent tries to recapture, he'll hear that annoying sound and will realize that the pawn is actually pinned. Therefore, black needs to do something to stop this move. As the bishop goes back, you finally land your knight to f5, which is the absolute best square for your knight. If you can land it there, it usually means that you won the game. And the cool thing is, once your opponent realizes that something is not going his way, usually by that time he's already lost, such as in this position. Notice, we've got this bishop pointing towards his king, we've got the other bishop also ready to put pressure, our super duper great knight on f5 is also targeting these squares, and plus we've got the third rank to potentially reroute our queen or maybe even our rook into the attack that way. And you can see how bad it is for black just by the sheer volume of errors that I've drawn here. Alright, let's say in most cases the most played move is knight h7, they're probably trying to like reroute somewhere here, but in fact it only makes it easier for you because now you've got queen g4 square, which you didn't have before, and now you're simply threatening queen takes g7 checkmate. If he covers on g5, no problem, you can just play h4, kick it out. If he tries to defend this pawn by going bishop f6, then this pawn is also hanging because the g pawn is pinned, so you can capture it with either a knight or a bishop. In both ways, you're winning the game. Now you're attacking the king, the pawn is pinned, you're threatening to capture on g7, and then no matter what, I mean, honestly, you'll probably win with any meaningful moves that you play here, like capture here, or h4, whatever, or maybe knight takes g7 looks very strong, just totally destroying his castling position, and then on the next turn you get this knight back, hit the queen, and then something like bishop f6 is a fantastic move, actually, because now we exploit both pins, this one and that one, and you're winning. Alright, this time your opponent plays slightly differently, which doesn't change anything for you, and at some point they will usually jump their bishop out to g4, you play h3, asking your opponent to make a decision, and let's say this time your opponent captures on f3. Does it shut down all the attacking plans we discussed so far? Not at all. You simply recapture, and in fact it's good for you for two reasons. First off, he traded off his powerful bishop, and in general, bishop is slightly stronger than a knight. And secondly, now your queen is already on the right spot to join your future attack on the king side. Therefore, your opponent just wasted some time to help you out. Now, after your opponent castles, there are actually two ways to go about this. The first way is just to stick to your original plan, and I'll show you how to do that. You just keep doing the same thing. There's also another way to spice it up, and you'll see how cool that is, because even though overall your plan has always remained to be the same, but there are some ways to put it on steroids to make it even more dangerous for your opponent, and again, stick around, I'll show you how to get it done. Now, they will usually play pawn h6, I'm just showing you most common moves of black, and now you see that you can actually move the knight right here straight away, without even castling and then getting the rook out of this square. You can do it right away, and that is totally fine. You sort of pretend playing Fischer random, just shuffling pieces around the first rank, but of course in reality your knight just keeps going to that great square on f5. If they ever go a5 trying to kick this bishop out, of course it's not the end of the world, you could ignore it, but even better is to stop it so that your bishop stays in the same diagonal, and after that nothing changes. The most played move by black here is knight to e7. They feel the danger, they see where your knight is coming, and they're trying to stop this, but knight e7 also breaks the connection between the queen and this knight on f6, which allows you to sacrifice your opponent's pawn, because it's always more prudent to sacrifice your opponent's pawns and pieces. And now, after this trade, you are up a pawn, plus his king side is totally destroyed, this pawn on h6 is hanging, and if he goes knight g6, which is again the most played move, then he'll probably be very excited to see the following move by you. It's not queen takes d8, it is actually taking this one, because of your great bishop that pins this pawn, and you're winning the game. Besides the usual plan, there is an even more straightforward attacking idea, bishop to g5. You capitalize on the fact that your queen is already on the king side, helping you to put more pressure there, and now your opponent is locked. Think about this. The knight can't move because it's pinned. The queen can't move because it has to guard the knight, otherwise you're gonna take this pawn and, expose the king. That's really bad for him. And the other problem for black is if he goes h6, there's another clever idea that you can execute right here. It is not to just retreat him back because then he can push g5 and he got rid of your pin. It is instead playing pawn to h4, a very clever idea. It is a efficient pole trap, but in this case it's not a trap, it's just a great idea because again, your opponent is locked, there is just no way out for him. And if he does nothing, you'll probably keep with your usual maneuver, and if he ever accepts the bait, then it comes to our favorite moment. Don't judge a rook by its cover. Now we've got this h-file wide open for our rook, the knight is attacked, and if the knight moves somewhere, you can stack your heavy pieces along the h-file, and now thanks to this pressure, you're just winning the game. You're going to checkmate black with, queen h7 or queen to h8 on the next turn, and if black tries to run away, then you can easily shut it down, Once again, thanks to your sniper bishop, queen takes f7. We've got this bishop right here supporting this attack, and then you can win with whatever you want, but the best way is to sacrifice the rook and to deliver this checkmate. What if your opponent advances in the center with a move pawn to d5? What should you do? Should you take here or not? It's very easy for white to mess up. That's why you really need to be focused and know how to play it as white. Do not react. To take is a mistake. Just stick to your plan. Go rook e1, vacating the square for the knight, and also protect your center just in case. Now, after your opponent trades in the middle of the board, it looks like he's making progress, but really he's going nowhere, which really summarizes my college years perfectly. And let's say your opponent plays whatever move at this point, just don't play knight f1. That would indeed be a big mistake. So there's a difference right here. We've got this file open, and if you move the knight right away, it's going to allow black to trade queens and indeed to ruin your plan. Wish to keep the queens on the board, want to keep attacking. Therefore, just get the queen out of the way, out of this open file first. And after that, on the next move, you then continue with your usual knight maneuver. By the way, the very interesting thing about this position is that practically, I think white is already winning here. And I remember when I had my first grandmaster coach back in the day, that really always confused me. When in a position like that, he would tell me something like, it looks like white is winning. And I'd be like why? There's no checkmate, material is equal, etc. And it wasn't clear to me at all why white may be winning here. To me, it doesn't seem like even close. But then, as I started to ask questions and try to comprehend his way of thinking, I just understood how much different the positional understanding of an advanced player compared to me at the time. And I was not a beginner already anyways. So here's what I think a strong player understands. Like a couple positional factors. You've got two bishops pointing towards the king side, which is always a great attacking combination. All right. This bishop on h5 is misplaced by black, because as white starts jumping forward with his knights, he's only gaining temples, hitting this bishop, and it doesn't help black at all. Therefore, the bishop is misplaced. The bishop would have been much better for black somewhere there, where he can develop it here and at least neutralize your active bishop. But on h5, it's just misplaced. This knight on c6 is actually also misplaced just because of your pawn on c3. It's also going nowhere. The other knight on f6 also has no moves forward, literally no moves without being lost right away. And even this d-file, which seems good for black at first, but all these squares are under very tight control of white, and therefore there's nothing black can do in reality. And as you start understanding all these factors together, you see that black is going nowhere while you've got a lot of attacking potential on the king side, and black's pieces are misplaced. So that's what differentiates strong players. That's how they see the position. And by the way, if you're curious about this, I've put together a special bundle where I put it all together, everything that you need to get yourself to the advanced level. And it's called Boost Your ELO to 2000, and I'll drop a link down below if you're curious, because knowing openings is good, but of course this is the stuff that really advances you forward. Let's say black moves the rook to the open file and you just continue with your plan, pressuring the bishop or getting ready to jump right there. The bishop retreats, you attack it once again. Notice the pin, right? Knight takes g6, threat is real, black can't even recapture. If the bishop slides back, you keep attacking, you hit the queen. If they trade, no problem. You hit the queen once again. And then after queen to d7, how would you continue your attack? You can think about that for a second. And you've got really advanced and great minor pieces already pointing there towards his king. And you only need to add this heavy artillery. So you go queen to f3, which is ready to attack here or here. And together with all the pressure from the minor pieces, black is already gone. After whatever move of black, once again you can sacrifice his pawn, because why not? Knight h6, and then you get the piece back right away. Now all these weaknesses are there, and if you go something like knight g6, do you remember what to play? Yeah, it's queen takes g6. We've got this fancy pin, and therefore you win the game. Another interesting idea to speed up your attack is to delay castling. You can start horsing around right away, and then once your opponent castles, you can continue this maneuver since this square is vacant right away. Moreover, on the next turn, you can decide how to proceed further, because you can go knight g3, sticking to your main plan, which is perfectly fine, but you can also go into this all-out attack with g4. Once again, you're gaining a tempo, and after that, still you can either just keep moving the knight forward to that advanced square, which is absolutely great for you, or the most energetic way is to just go forward and to crush your opponent's king straight away. You're putting pressure down here after the trade. That also helps you to develop your bishop to this great diagonal, putting a pin on the knight, And then after whatever black does, you continue just pushing forward. You can push the pawn forward on the h file. You can trade here, you can go knight h4, so many attacking ideas. The g file is open for your rook if you need to, and you're just crushing it. Black's got nothing to do, and within basically very few moves, you're gonna get to the king. If knight h5, should you take here or not? To take is a mistake, we don't do that. So instead, you just mount more and more pressure, knight h4, stick to your plan, and if he takes here, you could recapture, but even stronger is just to keep doing your thing. The pawn is pinned, he can't even recapture. If he takes your rook, we don't care. Queen h5, and we're getting things done. Queen to h8 is coming. After whatever black does, it's going to be this checkmate. Here's another thing your opponent can do to confuse you. He never develops his bishop to g4. Alright, how about bishop to e6, for example, because probably he will wish to develop the bishop somehow. Just don't take there. And I do know that Stockfish and Caruanas of the world love that, but that's a totally different story. So basically, if you take there, you don't have the square anymore for your knight. Plus, your opponent's got the f-file for his rook once he castles. Therefore, we do not wish to do that. You just ignore it. You simply do your thing. You castle, and if your opponent captures here, no problem. Like now, at least your rook is a little bit active along this file. And then as your opponent castles, there is another little nuance. Let's say your opponent plays some moves, and you can play the move rook e1, which we typically wish to play to vacate the square for the knight, but if you go rook e1 straight away, sometimes it could be slightly annoying that he can jump with his knight forward to g4. We didn't have that problem before, because if your opponent developed a bishop to g4, we usually played h3 to kick it out, and therefore we had our pawn on h3 controlling the square. But since he never played that move, we didn't play h3, and now he can play knight to g4. Now, it's not the end of the world, you can just play rook e2 and guard this pawn, but it's even easier to just play h3 up front, stopping this move, and then on the next turn, after whatever black does, you go rook e1, and then you keep horsing around, just realizing your usual plan, and basically nothing changes. Knight goes to f5, and you keep attacking. If black rushes to the attack before even completing his own development, you can open the center and turn things around, because his own king is centralized and therefore you can take advantage of that. Sometimes if you've castled already, you can put your rook to e1 and start attacking right there, but right now since your own king is in the middle, you can't do that. But you've got another trick, queen to b3. Hitting this knight on d5, but the knight cannot run away, because in that case, bishop takes f7 would be an issue for black. Otherwise, in most cases, your opponents are going to play bishop e6, which is another cool thing, because this time it blunders this pawn on b7. It's no longer defended, plus you attack this knight. And black can't defend it that way, because that would drop the rook. Otherwise, he needs to do something about that knight. They're going knight a5, and at this point, now they're officially the mayor of Blunderville. Because queen to b5 would attack everything, and you definitely win something. Let me know which subject you want me to cover next, and I'll talk to you next time.